Hello and welcome. Many thanks to the Life Coach University for the opportunity to contribute using my experience and expertise to pay it forward. The theme of this month's series is lifelong learning, where I'll be sharing easy concepts applicable to everyday living. Every one of you has something to offer, so please consider paying it forward in your own unique way. All right, so today's topic is about attribution error. Some of you may have heard of this at some point. It's become pretty popular that you might have seen it show up in newspapers and various media publications explaining some of the current events. My name is Joon Kim, and I'm an educational consultant. I work with students and learners across all ages to, again, find things in different psychological concepts that could be applied to various areas of our daily lives, just learning and applying. So again, what is attribution error? So the word attribution is basically talking about what do we assign the cause to some observation. Oftentimes it is behavior. So in other words, what's causing that a person to behave that way? What can we attribute it to? We've all used the concept of being hangry. Well, when some people are irritated, easily, irritable, we might say that I'm hangry. So basically what we're doing is we are attributing that irritability or that behavior of being irritated to being hungry. So attribution error, this is one of those concepts that is so nifty and helpful in life. Again, within the educational context, or as you'll find I frequently do, because as a parent, a lot of these are also applicable within the context of parent-child relationships. So attribution error, well, you can figure out by just the title alone, the name itself, means it's an incorrect attribution, and therefore it is titled an error. So what's going on is not really what's going on. So what is it? Well, in the most simplest definition, an attribution error is where you, the observer, makes an error in making an assignment to the cause of a person's behavior that you are observing. So here's an example. I'm sure this has happened to all of us, any one of us who drives. When you're driving on the road and you see someone zip past you at an extremely high rate of speed, I guarantee you the first thought that comes to our mind is not, oh my goodness, I hope that person's family or whatever emergency that they need to get to turns out all okay. That is not what goes to our mind. If we're honest, the first immediate thought is, what a careless, inconsiderate, reckless person that driver must be. And that right there, again, is a clear example. It's one of the most common classic examples for attribution error. Because again, what we are doing is we are assigning that person's behavior, their conduct, in this case, speeding on the road, to who they are, as opposed to maybe there's a reason why that person is driving that fast. And the interesting thing about this attribution error is that, yes, it is an error because we don't know factually whether that person is indeed rushing to a true emergency or not. That's certainly part of it. But the other half of it is that we don't do the same for ourselves. In other words, we don't apply the same rule to ourselves. When we find ourselves speeding, we would say, well, I have a good reason. I have to get here and pick up my, elderly grandmother. I have to get to my work. I have a very important appointment that can't be late to. So what we do is we will provide some situational reason or justification to explain away our sort of ill behaviors, whereas for others, we're not quite so gracious and easy to let go. So there's another example. This one's nice. This one is for all you parents. You guys could really relate to this one, either as an observer or maybe the guilty party. When we go to stores, let's say grocery stores, we will see children inside the shopping carts, right? We've all seen young children, right? Not teenage children sitting in the shopping cart, but younger children sitting in the shopping carts. What are they doing in those shopping carts? Okay. If you're honest and you're not afraid to blurt it out, which I'm going to do, those kids are on screens. They're on their parents' cell phone. They're playing video games. They're watching a cartoon. They are little zombies inside shopping carts watching screens. Now, if you yourself are a parent and you see this happening before your very eyes, what are you thinking? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Are you thinking, wow, that parent must have had a rough night. They must have gotten very little to no sleep, yet they still have to go grocery shop to get the food for the family. So that is an excellent way to get a little bit of relief by giving your kid the cell phone. Probably not. We would be so quick to say, that parent is so irresponsible. What a lazy parent, right? Just giving your kid the cell phone. But then again, when it's for us, no, I have a good reason. My kid's playing educational games on my phone, right? So we find ways to justify sort of why our decisions, our behavior is okay as opposed to others are not. So again, it is that attributing to the person versus the situation. That's the key point of this attribution error. Now, this attribution error does come up in education. As some of you have come to know, I have spent over 2 decades in education, working both K through 12 as well as higher ed. And making this attribution error can have some pretty significant impact when working with students. So can you think of some situations where this attribution error might come into play? Well, for one, we are very quick to take a student's performance and then immediately assign it to that kid's character, who they are as a person. So for example, if a kid misses a homework assignment, we might say, that's a lazy student, as opposed to, how do you know that there wasn't a family emergency? Maybe one of the parents had to be rushed to the urgent care, and so this poor child didn't get any sleep, and therefore they were unable to do their homework. Or another, possible scenario is maybe the assignment, and this is becoming more and more prevalent in education today because we rely so much on technology for students to submit assignments through online, to submit things electronically. So what happens when there is power outage at their home, right? So again, we're taking something that is outside the control of the student and then assigning it to the student as if that was who they were or who they are, that they are not very diligent student, they are lazy, they have some kind of excuses. But again, if it happens to us, then certainly, well, I didn't submit my work to my supervisor on time because I was having bad internet connection, right? We all have come across individuals, maybe ourselves, where we're trying to get on a Zoom conference and you're late. You're absolutely late, and there's really no good reason, but you attribute it to, oh, I had to upload the software or the update. My computer was giving me some technical issues. Now, that very well might be the case, but this attribution error really is just simple as when you see others doing something, you assign it to who they are. When you yourself do something that's less than desirable, it's not me. It's because of the situation I'm in. I get a special pass because I have a good reason for it. Okay. Now, again, attribution error, this is so easily applied to different areas. So think about in terms of your relationship, interpersonal skills, right? We've been talking about all these different examples and scenarios. Interpersonal skills, this is one of those attributes that I think a lot of workplaces, a lot of professional environments are always highly praising and the importance of interpersonal skills, regardless of the industry you're in. It could be something that most people would think is an isolated type of vocation, very minimal interaction with people, but nonetheless, you're going to have interactions with people, whether it be with the customers, the clients, your colleagues, your peers. There's always going to be some interaction with other human beings. Maybe not every single time, but the vast majority of the time. So this is where anyone who has ever worked as part of a group, a team, attribution error happens quite frequently. Now that you're familiar with this concept of attribution error, can you think about your own experience with attribution error when you were working as part of a team? I'm sure you've come up with some ideas. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's most likely another person for whom you're thinking you had made the attribution error, as opposed to somebody else misattributing your own behavior to whatever they thought was the reason why you did not deliver. Okay, so put it another way, when you have a teammate and let's say they are not contributing, you're likely to fall victim to making an attribution error by saying, you know, that person is not a team player. That person is lazy. That person just doesn't care, right? So what we frequently find ourselves doing is we're not giving others the same benefit of the doubt that we give to ourselves or that we expect and want from other people. So if a teammate, someone on your group is not pulling their fair share, yes, we are so quick to assign it to their character, who they are as a person, right? That's just who they are. They're just a freeloader who's trying to take credit for our work. But again, this attribution error says that we ourselves are very guilty of misattributing for others and of course expecting sort of the benefit of the doubt for ourselves. I was not able to do my portion of the group work because I had a good reason why. And again, it's just one of those things that you really can see it play out in every sector of our daily lives. In fact, there's one that it's become a very, very big social issue. I think it's not just here in the States, but it is around the world. And that has to do with homelessness, poverty, right? So attribution error. How would you apply attribution error to homelessness? And one of the things you'll notice is attribution is not manifested in a vacuum. There's a lot of emotion that's tethered to that attribution, right? I mean, let's spend some time here about the issue of homelessness. When we see poverty, we see individuals who are living on the streets, living at a park, basically public space, which is not a long-term place for residents. What goes through our mind? Are we thinking, wow, that person was working so hard at the company, but the evil owners or the evil boss fired or let them go? Is that what goes through our mind when we see someone? If we're honest, we can all agree, no, that is not. Maybe at some point that thought might come into our mind, but generally speaking, no. We are almost always thinking about the possibility or the high likelihood that they're substance abusers, They may have mental health issues, even though that actually might be a slightly, if we can say, better attribution. I mean, you are kind of attributing their homelessness to mental health, which is not always within our control. But again, I mean, that could very well be further differentiated, because some people might say, well, it depends. Just because they have a mental health issue does not, get them off the hook. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, that sounds pretty heartless. If someone has, a mental health, let's say schizophrenia or something, why would you attribute it to the person? Are you that heartless not to understand the very difficult predicament they're in? And so again, this is where you have to understand this concept of attribution is very powerful, because it is tied so intimately with our emotion. So think about it. If one person thinks that person suffers from the mental health because it's a genetic predisposition, and it truly is outside their realm of control, then we certainly can't hold them to that and hold their feet to the fire and attribute it to them. But someone else might say, well, that person chose not to take their medication. They have a mental health issue, and they did not take the medicine for their condition. So therefore, they chose to be irresponsible. And therefore, that is the result, that they have lost their job. They are unable to care for themselves, and therefore they are now on the streets. So again, in terms of attribution, but the error is very clear. It's very evident when you talk to family and friends and people who you would share maybe water cooler talk, talking about the various current events and issues and news stories. And when it comes to the issue of poverty and homelessness, many will attribute to one of those two things. It's either they specifically did something because that's who they are. They're lazy, they're unmotivated, they don't want to work. We're attributing it to that person's actual personality, their disposition. Or it is assigning it to an environmental, a situational cause for why they are in that situation. Okay. So again, attribution error, it's not a particularly complex concept. It's pretty straightforward. I think all of you by now have a good feel for what it is. And I'm sure you're eager to get out there and start using this, framework to understand. And by knowing that it exists, knowing that it's an inherent faulty mechanism in our brains, that you would actually use it for good. We're doing this whole pay it forward and helping others because we want to make this place better wherever you may be. And the way we can do that is by giving each other benefit of the doubt. So just as we began this topic today, when we see someone's behavior, instead of immediately attributing it to who they are, why not think about the possibility and, the real possibility that there is something going on in their situation that you just don't know that would make their behavior so logical and predictable. And I'll just wrap up by, again, highlighting the incredibly difficult and emotional tether to these attributions. So I remember this was a couple of years ago. It had to do with a large person who was boarding a plane, basically a passenger on an airline. And the controversial issue was, does the person need to buy one ticket or two tickets? Because if the person is large enough that the person needed to buy two tickets, then they should buy two tickets. And then some people felt that was unfair. That is not right. You should not do that. So you have this two different camps of one side saying, charging a passenger who's taking up 2 seats, 2 tickets is totally ethical, it is just. And then you have the other side who argues, no, it's not just. It's cruel. It's definitely, not loving to do that. So which side is correct? What should we do? Now, I'm not trying to advocate for the answer in the situation because I really don't have one. And I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. But what I am here looking for is how to examine this dilemma. How can we look at this to understand all the little nuances of what's going on? Well, all of you are going to think about attribution error now. You're going to say, well, why is this person so large? Because think about it. If a person is large because they chose to eat unhealthy, they chose to live an unhealthy lifestyle, and therefore their obesity is their fault, right? You're attributing it to that person. You're going to lean more towards, yeah, they should pay twice. Whereas some people who are leaning towards the attribution of it is not within their control, it is their either genetics, or going to the situational context, it's because they have had some really difficult life experiences. They've had some tragedies in their life, and therefore they have, they ended up resorting to food to cope with their immense pain. So again, recognizing that sometimes we do things because of the situation, not because that's who we are, right? And so depending on how one attributes is going to be tied so closely to our emotion. And then, of course, our final sort of conclusion of where we stand on some of these topics. So here, the big takeaway here, I just want to close by saying, know what attribution error is. Now you do. You have no excuses. You know what attribution error is. And now, therefore, being more knowledgeable, I hope you'll be more gracious to extend grace and some forgiveness to others. When something that you see either directly done to you or to others, extend grace. You don't know what type of day they're having. You don't know what happened to them yesterday. You really don't know. And we've all heard this before. You do not know what another person is going through. And therefore, whatever you observe in their behavior, if you were to give them grace to cover and overcome the attribution error, that would be truly something beneficial that can really spread around society, and everyone would be so appreciative of that care and concern that we receive. So again, avoid being so quick to judge. Think about attribution error. It is a mistake to so quickly attribute someone's behavior to who they are, as opposed to the situation that they're going through. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you on Monday next week.